Hey mathematics learners, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. On today's video tutorial, guys, we are still going through the Mathematics Literacy Paper 2 that was written in June 2021. And in this video tutorial, guys, we are going to be going through question 2.3. And question 2.3, guys, covers probability, right? It has a bit of probability, and it's just a level 1 question where we are basically required to calculate the rental price ratio given the formula, and we're going to use that to answer basically given questions, right? Before we get started with the video tutorial, guys, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Please make sure that you click on the notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video tutorial. And also please make sure that you give this video tutorial a huge thumbs up. Our plan is to get this video tutorial to 1,000 likes. So please make sure that you do not leave this video tutorial without clicking on that like button, right? And also, guys, please also make sure that you watch the ads. That really also helps a lot because that is also a way of supporting the channel. So please make sure that you also watch the ads. You can just quickly go get yourself a cup of water, cup of tea, a cup of coffee, some juice, and let the ads play, right? That will really help the channel, right? So without any further ado, let's get started with the video tutorial. Okay, so let's just read what we are given here. We are told that the rental price ratio is used to calculate whether it is cheaper to rent or buy a property, right? This ratio is calculated as follows. We are told that this ratio is given by this formula. Rental price ratio is equal to average property price over average annual rent, right? And then we're told that this ratio is generally classified into 3 categories, right? You've got the low, which is between which is 15 and below. So if you get a ratio of 15 and below, that tells you that it is better to buy than to rent. Okay, if you get a ratio that is between 5.1 to 20, that tells you that it is usually better to rent than to buy. And if you get a ratio that is between 20.1 and above, that tells you it is definitely better to rent than to buy, right? So that is the information that is given to us, right? So let us have a look at the questions that are given to us. The first question says that use the above information to answer the questions that follow. The average house price is 300,000 Canadian dollars, and the price to rent is 6,000 Canadian dollars. So let's see, with the dollar sign is called Canadian dollars per quarter. Advise Dumi, showing all calculations whether she should rent or buy a property. So before we can even advise Udumi, we basically need to look at this formula that we are given to calculate the rental price ratio, right? So let's have a look at that. So we're doing question 2.3, okay, and we are doing question 2.3.1. Okay, we are given the formula rental price ratio is equal to your average property price all over your average annual rent, right? So that is the formula that we're going to be using, right? And with this formula, we're going to calculate the rental price ratio. And once we've got the rental price ratio, then we're going to compare it with these categories to see how we can advise Udumi. If we get a ratio that is 15%, 15 and below, we can tell her that it's actually better to buy than to rent the property. If we get a ratio that is between 15.1 and 20, we'll tell her that it's actually usually better to rent than to buy. And if we get a ratio that is 20.1 and above, then we'll tell her, no, it's actually definitely better to rent than to buy. It's definitely better to rent than to buy, right? So that is what we are going to calculate now. Okay, so what is the average property price? Okay, we are given that the average house price is 300,000 Canadian dollars. So we're going to put that in our formula. It's going to be 300,000 Canadian dollars. And what is the average annual rent? We are told that the price to rent, right, per quarter is 6,000, right? But then here, guys, we are actually told that per quarter, right, it is equal to 6,000, right? So what is a quarter? Because we want the average annual rent. Okay, so if this is per quarter, what is a quarter of a year, right? We know that 1 year is equal to 12 months, right? Okay, so if we are given a quarter and we're told that per quarter, right, the price to rent is actually 6,000 Canadian dollars, that is telling us that the price to rent for 3 months is actually 6,000. How did I get to three months, right? We want to convert this per quarter amount to a per annum amount, right? So right now, this is per quarter, and per quarter is actually 1/4 of the 12 months. Okay, so this rent only represents 1/4 of the 12 months because it only represents a quarter of the 12 months, right? So 1/4 of the 12 months is like saying 1/4 multiplied by 12 months, right? So 12 months is the same as saying 12/1, which is equal to 12/4, right? So how many times does 4 go into 12? Or you can just simply punch that into your calculator, right? So that's 12/4, which is equal to 3 months. Okay, so this 6,000 Canadian dollars only represents the average per 3 months, but we want the average per year. So what must we multiply this 6,000 by to get the amount or the average that they pay per annum? Okay, what must we multiply that 3 by so that we are able to get a total of 12 months? 3 multiplied by what will give us 12 months? Okay, so 3, 6, 9, 12. 3 multiplied by 4 is going to give us 12 months, right? And 12 months, we know that it is a 1 year, right? So 3 multiplied by 12 is going to give us 12 months. That means that 6,000 Canadian dollars, right? That's 6,000 Canadian dollars. We also need to multiply it by 4 so we are able to get the correct figure that represents 1 month and not a figure that represents 3 months. Okay, so if you multiply it by 4, you will be able to get the correct amount that represents how much the average is per annum. Okay, so if you say 6,000 multiplied by 4, and you'll find that the average per annum is actually equal to 24,000 Canadian dollars, right? So we've got our answer, right? So what is important to note here, guys, is this section there, right? Per quarter is not the same as per annum, right? Per quarter is the amount, the average amount for a quarter. And how did you get the amount of months that a quarter represents? We said 1/4 of 12. And you can also remember this from grade 7, grade 8, that of something means that you're going to multiply. So if you want to get what is a quarter of 12 months, you're going to say a quarter multiplied by 12 to get that a quarter of 12 months is actually equal to 12/4. And if you simplify that 12/4, you get 3 months. Okay, and therefore that means that 6,000 Canadian dollars represents the average rent per 3 months, for 3 months actually, right? So the average rent for 3 months is actually 6,000. So how would we get the average rent for a whole year, right? Then we say 3 multiplied by what will equal to 12 months, because a whole year is 12 months. And then we said that is 3 multiplied by 4. And then from there, we could see that, oh, okay, that means that we need to multiply that 6,000 by 4 to get the average annual rent. Okay, so now that we've got the average annual rent, we can go back to that point there, and we're going to divide that by 24,000 to get the rental price ratio. Okay, so it's 300, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 divided by 2, 4, 2, 3. So it is 12.5, right? So we don't have units here. Why am I saying we don't have units? Because the Canadian dollar and the Canadian dollar cancel, and we are just left with that rental price ratio of 12.5. Okay, and then how would we advise Utumi then? Now that we've basically calculated the rental price ratio, we find that 12.5 is actually below. It's actually 15 and below. So it's actually below the 15. It's actually below the 15 that is given to us, right? So what does that tell us? Therefore, this tells us that it is better to buy. It is better to buy than to rent. Okay. So that tells us that it is better to buy and not rent. Okay. All right, guys. So let's have a look at question 2.3.2. Right. So question 2.3.2 is actually probability. So with probability, guys, there's a formula that you guys need to remember. The first thing is you need to remember that probability is equal to the number of favorable outcomes divided by the number of possible outcomes. That is the first formula that you guys need to remember, especially when you're dealing with probability, right? So in this question, we are dealing with probability. You need to remember that formula, right? That probability is equal to, let me just write it down, equal to the number of favorable outcomes over. So the number of favorable outcomes, what they mean by this is that the outcomes that you want, the outcomes that you need to calculate, divided by, right, the number of possible outcomes. So the number of possible outcomes is the total number of outcomes that are given to you. Okay, right. So you guys need to remember this formula. Probability is equal to the number of favorable outcomes divided by the number of possible outcomes, or the total number of outcomes that are given to you guys, right? Another thing that you also need to remember before we start tackling this question, right, is interquartile range, right? Interquartile range, right? Interrange, right? Interquartile range. What does interquartile range mean? Interquartile range means that you will take your quartile 3 minus your quartile 1, right? Remember, when you calculate range, right, we usually take your maximum minus the minimum. But with interquartile range, you will take the maximum minus the minimum of your quartile, right, to get your interquartile range. So it's your Q3 minus your Q1. That's your interquartile range, right? That's Q3 minus Q1. So these are the formulas that you guys really need to know before you even start tackling this question, right? Okay, if you want more practice on this, I've also done another probability question in paper 1. I'll just put a link to it or show you guys the thumbnail to it, and you can have a look at that tutorial as well on the playlist, and also make sure that you also practice with that one as well. Okay, so let's have a look at this question. Question 2.3.2 says that the following are rental price ratios for selected North American cities. So these are basically the rental price ratios. Remember, we went looked at the rental price ratios, and we looked at how we calculate the rental price ratios, right? So this is telling us the rental price ratios for the North American cities, right? And we're also given the rental price ratios for the South Asian cities, right? And we are given a box and whisker plot that represents the rental price ratios, right, for the cities in Africa. Remember, guys, when you're working with a box and whisker plot, the first value that is there, this is our minimum, right? That's the minimum. The Q1, that is your Q1, right? When you start the box, the first value when you start the box, that is your Q1. The median or the middle value in our box is our Q2, so I'm going to put that Q2, and our last value in our box is our Q3. Okay, and then the final value in our whisker, because this is a whisker, box and whisker plot, right? So in the lower end of your whisker is your minimum. In your higher end of your whisker is your maximum. So that's your maximum value. And in your box, you've got Q1. Okay, so this is a box. This is a box and a whisker plot, right? Where in your lower end, you've got your minimum. In your upper end, you've got your maximum. And inside your box, you've got Q1, Q2, and Q3. Okay, so now let's start answering these questions. Use the above information to answer the questions that follow. Determine in simplified fractional form the probability of randomly selecting a South Asian city classified as high. You see, this question is asking us to calculate the probability, right? The probability of randomly selecting a South Asian city. So we're calculating probability for question 2.3.2a, right? So question 2.3.2a, we are calculating the probability of randomly selecting a South Asian city. So which data are we going to focus on? We're going to focus on the South Asian city data, right? And then what is the formula that we use to calculate probability? We know that probability is equal to, okay, the number of favorable outcomes divided by the number of possible outcomes. Okay, that is the first thing that we need to note, that we're calculating probability. And then what is the second thing that we need to note here? What are the favorable outcomes? What are the number of possible outcomes, or the number of total outcomes, right? So that is the second thing that we need to determine, right? So it says that determine in simplified fractional form the probability of randomly selected a South Asian city classified as high, right? So that is the clue there. A South Asian city classified as high. So what is classified as high? You based on the information that was given to us in the beginning, what is classified as high? We know that values that are classified as high are values or ratios that are between 2.0, 20.1 and above. So those are the values that are classified as high. So we need to go to our South Asian data and basically circle all the ratios that are between 20.1 and above, right? So we're going to look. We're going to look. We've got how many? 1, 2, 3, right? So these ratios are actually high, right? Because we need to look at the probability of selecting a South Asian city that is classified as high. And we see that these three ratios are actually classified as high. Why am I saying that they're classified as high? Because they are between 20.1 and above, right? So they are within that range of 20.1 and above, right? So what are the favorable outcomes then? The favorable outcomes is what we want to see, right? What is classified as high, right? Which is these 1, 2, 3 ratios. That is the favorable outcome. What you want, and we want the ratios that are classified as high, right? So the ratios that are classified as high, we're going to say it is equal to, how many ratios are they? It is 3. So please don't go and actually list these ratios. No, you actually count 1, 2, 3 ratios are classified as high, and you put that value there because that is the favorable outcomes. Those are the ratios that are classified as high. All right. And then what are the number of possible outcomes? So what are the total outcomes that are given here for the South Asian cities? Then we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the total outcomes, or the number of possible outcomes, right, are 12, right? So then what is the probability? So what is the probability of randomly selecting a South Asian city classified as high? So the probability of selecting a South Asian city that is classified as high is 3/12, right? And we can just simplify that as how many times does 3 go into itself? It goes into itself once. And how many times does 3 go into 12? 3, 6, 9, 12. It goes into 12 4 times. So the probability of selecting a South Asian city that is classified as high is 1/4. Okay. All right. Okay. So that is the final answer. We're going to move on. Okay. We're going to go to question 3.2.3.2b. Okay. So 2.3.2b is saying determine the value of Q1, the first quartile, okay, if the interquartile range for Africa is 14.25. Okay. So we told that the interquartile range for Africa is 14.25. But before we even start with the interquartile range stories, okay, what do we know about the interquartile range? I said to you guys, interquartile range, you calculate it by saying Q3 minus Q1. So we're going to start off with that. Interquartile range is equal to Q3 minus your Q1. Okay, and we are given here that the interquartile range for Africa is 14.25. So that is our IQR. Okay, our IQR, the value is given as 14.25. Did I just say percent? 14.25. Okay, and then we go to Africa, right? This is our the rental price ratios for selected cities in Africa. We're going to use this box and whisker plot to help us answer this question, right? Okay. So we need to find what the we obviously want to calculate what Q1 is, and we have Q3. So we just need to substitute what we have into this formula, and then we manipulate our equation to solve for our Q1, right? So what is our Q3? Our Q3 is 17.89, right? And what is our Q1? Q1 is what we want, right? So now we are going to solve this equation for Q1. How are we going to solve this equation for Q1? We need to isolate or have Q1 on its own. How can we isolate Q1 or have it on its own, right? So I'm going to give you the standard, just the fast solving, right? And I'm going to show you how I got to that, right? For in case you don't understand. So the first thing you're going to do, obviously, I'm going to start off by moving your Q1, right, to my left hand side. And if you move your Q1 to your left hand side, the sign changes and it's going to be Q1 plus 14.25, which is equal to 17.89, right? So when you move, right, a term to the other side of an equation, the sign changes, right? So this negative becomes a positive. We've got a positive Q1 plus 14.25, right? And then how do we isolate this Q1? You're simply going to move this whole term to the right hand side. And when you move it to the right hand side, you'll be left with 17.89 minus 14.25. And then that is easy, right? We've isolated Q1 to solve. But then if you don't understand the concept of moving values to the left side of the equal sign, or moving values to the right side of the equal sign, and when you move them, the sign changes, I can also explain it to you guys in this sense, right? So we were given 14.25, which is equal to 17.89 minus Q1. Okay. So what must we do to this Q1 so that we move it, or that it gets removed from this side? Do you agree that if you plus Q1, you're actually cancelling it, right? Minus Q1 plus Q1 is equal to 0. But what you do on this side, you must also do on that side. That means that you must plus Q1 on this side as well, right? So then you'll have the equation Q1 plus 14.25, which is equal to 17.89 minus Q1 plus Q1 is equal to 0. Same thing as if you're saying minus 1 plus 1 is equal to 0. Same concept, right? So minus Q1 plus Q1 is equal to 0, right? But here, because you've plussed it on this side to get rid of it, you need to plus it on that side, right, as well, right? So you've got plus Q1. It means it's going to be Q1 plus 14.25, which is equal to 17.89, right? And then here we still want to isolate this Q1. So what must we do? We must remove or get rid of this 14.25 on the left hand side. How do we get rid of this 14.25 on the left hand side? You must, if you want to get rid of it, you must minus 14.25, right? And what you do on that side, you need to also do on that side. Okay, therefore, if you say plus 14.25 minus 14.25, do you see that it's 0? So that is cancelled on that side. So you're just going to have Q1, which is equal to, because we minused it on this side, we also need to minus it on that side, 17.89 minus 14, which is equal to 3.64. Right, 3.64. Our Q1 is equal to 3.64. Okay, same thing here as well. That was just showing you guys different methods you can use depending on your level of understanding, right? So that is just going to be 3.64. So your Q1 is equal to 3.64. And we can also just slot it in there. Why did I say 6? Yeah, 64. That is your Q1. So we've calculated our Q1. And then let us go on to the last question, 2.3.2c. It's saying comment on the possibility of owning a property in these areas by comparing the minimum, the maximum, and the median values for North America and Africa. Okay, so we're comparing values for North America and Africa. Okay, those are the two values that we are going to be comparing. Okay, so what are we going to actually be comparing exactly? We're going to be comparing the minimum, the maximum, and the median values, right? So after we've looked at the minimum ratio, rental price ratio, the maximum rental price ratio, the median rental price ratio, for both North America and Africa, then we're going to comment on, is it possible to, is there a higher possibility of actually owning a property in North America than Africa? Or is there a higher possibility of owning a property in Africa than in North America? So that is what we're trying to establish, right? So we're going to use a table to answer this question. Okay, so there's North America and Africa, right? So I've basically drawn the table there, right? So we're going to have all these values that we're going to be comparing. We're comparing the minimum, maximum, and the median. So I'm going to write that there. Minimum, maximum, median. Okay, cool. So what is the minimum for North America, right? So you guys actually need to remember, when you're given a set of data, you always, especially when you're working with data handling or probability, you need to remember that it always needs to be in ascending order. You need to make sure that your data is in ascending order. By ascending order, I mean from smallest value to biggest value, right? So we can see that in North America, it's actually in ascending order, right? Because it's from smallest value to the biggest value. So we don't have to stress about arranging our data and actually putting it in ascending order. But if it was not in ascending order, right, like the one in South Asia, for example, if you're asked about comparing Africa to South Asia, that means that you were actually supposed to now put South Asia in ascending order, right? But then North America has been done for us, right? It's in ascending order, so we don't have to panic. We just need to then get the minimum, get the maximum, and get the median. Okay, so what is the minimum value? Our minimum value is 2.1 for North America, 2.11. What is our maximum value for North America? 15.26. Okay, we're going to get to the median just now. Okay, what is the minimum for Africa? 2.36. What is the maximum for Africa? 27.41. And what is the median, right? You need to remember that Q2 is the same thing as saying the median, right? So Q2 is the median, right? And the median is Q2. So our median is 12.19 for Africa. And then how do you get the median for North America, right? So a way that you can do this is you can count all your data, right? The data that is given to you, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, so you've got 21 values, right? So you need to have equal values on each side, right? And then the value that is in the middle is actually your median, right? So you can just say, you can start off by counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's the 10th value, right? Then you're going to start here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's the 10 value. So, right, you've got 10 values on either side, right? And the value that's on the middle of those 10 values is 7.59. You can double check again. You need to have equal number of values on each side, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got 10 values on our left, okay? But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 values on our right. So we've got equal values on either side, meaning that this number, 7.59, is the number that is in the middle of our values. Therefore, our median is 7.59, right? Median is 7.59. So our median for North America, our median ratio is 7.59. Okay. In a case where you get two numbers that are in the middle, then you need to add those two numbers together and you need to divide by 2, right? For example, if you had 10 and 10 on either side of these two numbers, then you need to add them together and divide by 2, right? Sometimes you don't get one value that is in the middle. Sometimes you get two values that are in the middle. So if you get two values that are in the middle or in right of your data, then you need to add them together and you need to divide them by 2. That is very important. Okay. But anyway, in this case, we've got a nice example where we just have one value, so we can stick to that. So now, once you've basically written all this, the question is saying that we need to comment on the possibility of owning a property in these areas by comparing the minimum, maximum, and median. So what does this show? What does this show? Okay, so we can see that Africa has a max ratio, right, of 27.41, right? And North America has a max ratio of 15.26. So with Africa, with the maximum ratio of 27.41, what does that tell us? If your ratio is above, if it's 2.1 and above, it is definitely better to rent than to buy, right? So for here, it's better to rent than to buy, right? So I'm just going to write that down here. Is in the range of 5.1 to 20. So this tells us that it is usually better to rent than to buy. Looking at this table that we've just filled in, we filled in the maximum, the minimum, the maximum, and the median for North America and Africa. And we see that the minimum rental price ratio for North America is lower than the minimum rental price ratio for Africa, right? We see that the maximum rental price ratio is still lower for North America than the rental price ratio for Africa. And we also still see that the median rental price ratio for North America is still lower. This is what you need to state. Than the rental price ratio, the median rental price ratio for Africa, right? So you need to say the minimum for North America is lower. The maximum for North America is lower than Africa. And the median for North America, you need to state 7.59, is lower than Africa. Okay? Therefore, we can see that it is better to buy a house in North America, right? Because surely it makes sense that the rental price ratio, the average property price per average annual rent is, okay, the average property price per average annual rent ratio is lower than what you would pay in Africa. Therefore, that just tells us that it is better to own or buy a house in North America, right? So that final answer, guys, I'll just type it on the screen for you guys to see how you're supposed to write that. Okay, and then that is really the end of question 2.3, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I clarified everything for you guys. Okay, the next question that will be coming up, guys, is question 3. And question 3 covers tax, right? Question 3 covers tax, right? So please make sure that you are subscribed. Please make sure that you click on the notification bell so that you get notified you get notified every time I upload a new video. And also please make sure that you like this video tutorial, and I hope that you guys watch the ads. Okay, so that is it for today's video tutorial, guys, and I'll see you guys on my next upload. That is it, guys, and I'll see you guys on my next upload, Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. Bye, Looking at this table that we've just filled in, we filled in the maximum, the minimum, the maximum, and the median for North America and Africa. And we see that the minimum rental price ratio for North America is lower than the minimum rental price ratio for Africa, right? We see that the maximum rental price ratio is still lower for North America than the rental price ratio for Africa. And we also still see that the median rental price ratio for North America is still lower. This is what you need to state. Than the rental price ratio, the median rental price ratio for Africa, right? So you need to say the minimum for North America is lower. The maximum for North America is lower than Africa. And the median for North America, you need to state 7.59 is lower than Africa. Okay? Therefore, we can see that it is better to buy a house in North America, right? Because surely it makes sense that the rental price ratio, the average property price per average annual rent is, okay, the average property price per average annual rent ratio is lower than what you would pay in Africa. Therefore, that just tells us that it is better to own or buy a house in North America, right? So that final answer, guys, I'll just type it on the screen for you guys to see how you're supposed to write that. Okay, and then that is really the end of question 2.3, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I clarified everything for you guys. Okay, the next question that will be coming up, guys, is question 3. And question 3 covers tax. Right, question 3 covers tax, right? So please make sure that you are subscribed. Please make sure that you click on the notification bell, so that you get notified you get notified every time I upload a new video. And also, please make sure that you like this video tutorial, and I hope that you guys watch the ads. Okay, so that is it for today's video tutorial, guys, and I'll see you guys on my next upload.